Hello everybody, Vic here with another video, and today we're talking horror movies from 1986. 40 long years these movies have been out. This is the year to celebrate them, to revisit them, the 40-year anniversary. In the comments, let me know if you have any other suggestions for horror movies from 1986. I try to do some of the big picture ones that I hadn't watched in a long time, or ones maybe I'm visiting for the first time. But what were the big things that stand out about 1986 as a year in horror films? Of course, mid-1980s, there was still the big slasher craze going on, of course, after the success of Halloween, Friday the 13th. We had a bunch of sort of rip-off type movies. Mostly the early 80s is where you got the big splurge of like sort of Halloween, Friday the 13th rip-offs. But 1986 was kind of like a mix of a lot of different things. It wasn't like they were transitioning out of slashers. That was still there. The big three franchises was still there, but there was some very interesting stuff added into that mix as well. So we're going to talk about a certain selection of movies from 1986, and I want to start with April Fool's Day. Now, this is a movie that I knew nothing about before last year. It came up as something for us to watch, me and Nick Arcana to review. We did a deep dive on it, but had never really watched it, heard of it, had no spoilers, nothing going in, no idea what I was about to watch. So the first watch of April Fool's Day is very interesting if you go in blind. Now, this is one of those movies you got to go in blind as a bat. Do not read about it. Do not watch the trailer. Do not allow yourself to be spoiled, because this is one of those twisting, turny type of movies where you want to give fresh eyes, let all the twists kind of sink in for the first time without knowing anything about what's happening at the end of the movie or ahead of time. But is it a good movie? Well, you basically have a group of characters that are going to visit a friend on sort of an isolated island, and at this island, all this crazy stuff starts to happen, and there's a big mystery about who's doing the killing, and I can't talk about it without giving much away, so it's kind of like I got to keep it really bare bones in my description of it. But think sort of like a feel of an Agatha Christie mystery. If there's any Agatha Christie fans out there, it feels like that kind of mystery here as they go on this island and people start to get picked off one by one in typical slasher fashion. But I will tell you, this is not a typical slasher film. So, I mean, it's a fun first watch for sure in terms of rewatchability. Once you know the twist, once you kind of know what happens, maybe the rewatchability is not there. But if you haven't seen April Fool's Day from 1986, I would say at least one time, give it a watch. And you know who has it? It actually has Ginny from Friday the 13th Part 2, which that actress, she doesn't pop up in a lot of movies, but when she does, it's always a welcome surprise. So the further continued adventures of Ginny. What does she do after escaping Jason? I guess she ended up in this movie with these silly group of friends. So April Fool's Day is one that I'll give a recommendation to. But again, go in blind as a bat. Do not read about it ahead of time. Just turn it on and let the twist sink in. Try to guess the ending. Try to figure out what's going on and see if you're right at the end. This is one of those twisty, turny type movies. All right, let's move on to Chopping Mall. This is what I mean when I say that there were some interesting things going on. It wasn't just early 80s was a lot of just random guy with some kind of weapon, a drill, machete, whatever it might be, going around killing people. It's kind of bare bones slasher type stuff. But here we have a little bit ingenuity, I would say. An original idea. I mean, 1986, we had Terminator in 1984, which of course was a spot-on warning about the future of machines and robots versus humans and future wars coming in 2027. But in 1986, we have some security robots at a mall that, basically go crazy and is going to stalk and kill a group of teenagers who, of course, are doing what they did in the 80s, which is, staying at a mall overnight, having sex, and getting killed by security robots. So there's a fun element to this film. It's not a serious slasher by any stretch. It's meant to be goofy, meant to be funny, B-movie material, but you'll have fun with some of the kills. These robots, man, they show no mercy in how they kill these mofos, and it's a fun time. And I would say with Chopping Mall, I was surprised by the order the characters died, but also surprised by actually who all died and who was left at the end. Sometimes with slasher films, you get the group of characters, and immediately from the very first couple scenes, you can be like, okay, that's the final girl. They're dead. They may make it, but they're probably dead. With Chopping Mall, it's actually a little bit more unpredictable, I would say, in terms of who actually makes it to the end. So listen, basically think Terminator horror style. Maybe Terminator is already a horror film, as I've said in the past, but think goofy B-movie schlock style Terminator, robots against human beings, teens getting killed in the mall, Dawn of the Dead style in the mall, except with killer robots. Chopping Mall, I gotta give a recommendation. It's a B-movie you gotta watch at least once in your lifetime if you've not. All right, let's move on to something a little bit more prestige-ish, and that's gonna be David Cronenberg's The Fly. The Fly is a movie that I watched, I believe, for the first time, again, a lot of classics just, I guess, passed me right by my childhood. But I watched this again maybe last year or 2 years ago. We did a deep dive on The Fly, and first, I want to say Jeff Goldblum is one of my favorite actors. So anytime I see Jeff Goldblum pop up, whether it be Jurassic Park, Independence Day, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Thor movie that he's in, he's always a welcome addition to basically any movie. So Jeff Goldblum is one of my favorite actors. So I'm already kind of sold by that. You have Gina Davis here as well, and this movie works if you buy into their love story. Because there's two things going on with The Fly. There's sort of a tragic love story about this guy who's a scientist who really comes up with this machine that, if things went well, would be probably the biggest, invention in the history of mankind. At the same time, he falls in love with a reporter, and they have sort of a love story going on, but unfortunate circumstances allows Jeff Goldblum to sort of start to turn into a fly. So you got the love story part of it, but then you got the special effects. And watching Jeff Goldblum slowly transform over the movie, the makeup effects are so good here. Nick Arcano was not a big fan of this movie. I did buy in the love story, and by the end, I just felt bad about all the characters. I felt bad for everybody at the end. There was really no bad guy or good guy. It was just like, man, what a tragic, terrible, depressing movie. That's the thing with The Fly. If you're gonna watch this movie, appreciate the special effects, try to get in the love story, but understand that this is not a feel-good movie. This is not a movie that's gonna leave you with, butterflies in your stomach. You're gonna feel depressed and want to just watch something to cheer you up, maybe eat a slice of cake afterwards or something, just get your mood up, because this was not a fun film by the end. But The Fly, I mean, listen, I have to deep dive more and more David Cronenberg stuff. I'm pretty uneducated on most of his filmography, but The Fly for me is pretty solid. All right, what else do we have in 1986? Well, in terms of the big horror franchises, of course, we have Jason Lives here in 1986, which, I mean, I've talked about it, ad nauseum about Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6. It's my favorite film in the Friday the 13th franchise. I just love how Tom McLoughlin got the perfect mix of horror and comedy in this film. Alongside with Final Chapter. I think Final Chapter is the other one that could be called the definitive Friday the 13th film for me. So Part 4 and 6 to me are on a level beyond all the rest of them. But listen, you've seen Jason Lives, but this movie has so much rewatchability that 40th anniversary, if you haven't watched it recently, I mean, of course, the time to do it probably was in the last 2 months because you had 2 Friday 13ths. But fear not, if you were slacking off the last 2 months, there's one more Friday 13th towards the end of the year. So watch Jason Lives at some point during the year, or wait till Friday 13th, and make sure you watch it for the 40th anniversary. CJ Graham is my favorite portrayal of Jason. Sheriff Garrett is my favorite supporting character in the franchise. So much depth to the father who just doesn't want his daughter to get mixed up, which he thinks is bad company, which, let's be honest, Tommy Jarvis, responsible for all the deaths in the future of the Friday 13th franchise after this movie, because he had to bring Jason back to life. He is responsible, so yeah, I guess he is a bad influence, so maybe he should keep Megan away from her. But slowly but surely, Tommy's proven to be right in terms of Jason's out there killing teens, not killing kids, because Jason doesn't kill kids. But you have just a great, fun, humor-filled, action-packed Friday 13th film. Can't recommend Jason Lives enough. All right, let's talk about The Wraith. The Wraith. W-R-A-I-T-H. This is a Charlie Sheen film from the 80s. Is it a horror film? I don't know. This guy is playing like somebody in a mysterious car that's going around and kind of having drag racing competitions with his bully gang group, slowly killing them because I guess they had killed him previously. Now he's back as a ghost with a crazy car. It reminds me a lot of the Stephen King short story, Sometimes They Come Back, which actually was a movie also directed by Tom McLoughlin. But if you haven't seen The Wraith, it's a very low-key Charlie Sheen performance. He's barely in the movie. But there's some fun scenes for sure, and there's a mystery component to this movie as well. Again, what I like about 1986 is like these movies are sort of all playing with the genre. We're not just getting traditional slasher films. We're not getting traditional ghost films. They're very original story ideas coming in 1986. So The Wraith is a great one to watch. And for a double feature, another 1986 film that's going to give you the same kind of feel, but one of the better horror films to me of the 80s is The Hitcher. The Hitcher from 1986, proven, I guess, it was more of a, hitchhiking was more of a thing like in the 70s and 80s. By the time this movie came out, apparently it wasn't as prominent, but man, I don't care how sleepy you are. I don't care how you're losing your focus, hitting the side of the road, how much you want company. man, you can't pick up hitchhikers, and you definitely can't pick up one that looks like Ruger Hauer, because from the second he gets in the car, I'm thinking, man, this dude is creepy as hell. This is one of the most sinister looking hitchhikers you could have possibly picked up, Jim. I don't understand. This movie grabs you from the opening minutes. As soon as you're in the car and you realize, oh, shit's going down. From there, it's a nonstop, action-packed cat and mouse chase between, Jim Halsey and our mysterious villain. Now, the mysterious villain here, a lot of people, when they watch The Hitcher, they come away just wondering, like, what was his deal? What was going on with that guy? Like, famously, of course, he has the knife to Jim, and he's like, I want you to say, I want to die. And my theory has always been that this guy, the hitchhiker, was pretty much wanting to die, but he wanted somebody to take him out. So he's like doing this hitchhiking thing because he wants to find someone who is going to fight back against him, who shows him enough to be like, okay, this is the adversary I want to take me out. And with Jim, he's kind of pushing him all throughout the movie, I think, to get to that point where he's ready to kill him. It's never spoken. Maybe they're smart enough not to give him like an actual reason on paper, like actually explain the film why he's doing what he's doing. But that's kind of my takeaway, is that he wants Jim to kill him. So the whole thing is building up Jim's toughness, Jim's hate for him, to make sure when you get to this end scene that he's ready to take him out. But man, that scene with the truck, man, I'll tell you what. You want to talk about shocking death scenes that come out of nowhere that are unexpected? I mean, anytime there's a romantic interest in horror films, you're always kind of like, okay, well, this is here to have the super happy ending with the two characters romantically making it out after defeating the villain. And the Hitcher says, I don't give a damn what your expectations are for that kind of story. We're going to go dark here. And it's a very dark scene. The whole movie's dark, though. This is like one of those movies that, again, like The Fly, when the movie's over, you're not left with any kind of feel-good feeling. You're just kind of left wondering, like, what did I just watch? What was this? Like, and there's a curiosity about the story and a mystery to it that makes rewatches very fun. Like, you're really, on each watch, you're noticing more things with the characters, putting things more together in your mind about what the villain was all about, what the hero, I guess you want to call him a hero, what he was thinking throughout the film. So there's a lot in the facial expressions and the acting, a lot of subtext within this film that you can really dive into. So The Hitcher to me is like, it's horror, but it's very like psychological horror, in my opinion. I mean, I guess you could consider maybe like A24-ish in the way it's executed. So if you haven't seen The Hitcher, 40-year anniversary, definitely get on that. Watch that for sure. Stay away from Hitcher Part 2, which I think came out in the 90s. It brought back the character of Jim, but it was just poorly done. The remake, though, actually, the Hitcher remake, it's not terrible. I mean, you don't have to watch it. You don't need it, but the Hitcher remake, I don't know if it was Platinum Dooms, but it wasn't one of the worst remakes. It wasn't egregiously bad like a lot of the remakes were in the 2000s. There's a place for the Hitcher remake. It changes some things up with the story, keeps it a little bit fresh. So I would check out the Hitcher remake if you like the first Hitcher. You won't be offended by the Hitcher remake. So okay, now let's talk about Stephen King doing drugs and directing this crazy cocaine-fueled, some would call masterpiece, some would call trash, some would call something in between. I'm talking about Maximum Overdrive from 1986. Again, I don't know. I mean, this was a story from Stephen King, but again, similar to the Terminator thing, this is, again, machines coming alive and taking out humans. You could tell that was becoming a more prominent idea. Similar to Shopping Mall, you got robots. In this case, it's basically trucks for the most part. At a sort of restaurant, gas station, whatever you want to call it, are a group of ragtag characters thrown together, trying to figure out how to take out these machines, because I guess there was some comet or something that came and caused this disturbance in the force, let's say. Look, Maximum Overdrive, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's some kind of great movie by any stretch. Stephen King doesn't like it because, I mean, he never directed a movie again after this, and people were getting hurt on set because things were just not executed well. But there's fun to be had here. Emilio Estevez is always fun. I like Emilio Estevez a lot. Anytime Emilio Estevez shows up like in an 80s film, I'm like, yeah, Emilio Estevez. So he's fun here. All the characters actually are, well, there's one character that Nick Arcana hates a lot, but finds her to be very annoying. But I think it's a pretty good film. This is one of those movies that used to always came on TBS, 2 o'clock in the morning. always on a night where you're supposed to be in bed sleeping because you're expected to get up 5 hours later because school starts was way too early for no reason at all. The idea of being at the bus stop at 7:30 in the morning, who the hell? I don't know why they think school should start that early. Hopefully that's changed. But you just stay up. You had that one more. You have the thought of go to sleep, but then Maximum Overdrive starts on TBS, and you're like, okay, I'll watch the first commercial break. And then you're just sucked in, and probably like halfway through, you fall asleep on one of the commercial breaks. So you see bits and pieces of the movie. It was always like 2 o'clock in the morning, though, on TBS. Guys for movies, movies for guys who like movies, and dinner and a movie, all those TBS fun things, maybe USA Up All Night. But so I saw bits and pieces of Maximum Overdrive all throughout my childhood, TV version, of course. But watching it now, the first half of the film slaps. The second half definitely loses momentum and it's not as good, but you can have fun with Maximum Overdrive for sure. Okay, one that I just watched recently, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Now, this came out in 1986, and I've never been that high on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I've never actually put it with my other favorites like Nightmare, Halloween, Friday the 13th. And I haven't seen all of them. I feel like I've seen the original, I've seen the 2003 one. I might have seen one of the newer ones also, but it feels like there's always a trash entry with this franchise where they don't quite get it right. So Part 2, which was also done by Tobe Hooper, I was intrigued by the idea of like, I haven't seen this. I heard some wild things about it online, so I turned it on, and I'll tell you what, it goes in a different direction from the first film. This, what I'd say, is more horror comedy, and Bill Moseley's really hamming it up here, and Dennis Hopper's really hamming it up. But I had fun with Texas Chainsaw 2. I mean, it's a wild and crazy film. Leatherface is crazy. There's a lot of crazy scenes. I mean, there's a jump scare at the radio station where Leatherface appears out of nowhere, and I'll tell you, watch that bad boy with surround sound on, and if that jump scare doesn't get you, it's one of the better jump scares I've seen in a horror film recently. This felt like almost like Stephen King on cocaine was directing this also. I mean, if you just want balls to wall, like what the hell is going on? Maybe do a double feature of Texas Chainsaw 2 with Maximum Overdrive. But I had fun with it. It's different. Again, it's really not going for scares as much. It's more, the performance is so over the top that you could tell they knew the assignment was to kind of go over the top here. It feels more just, we're not going to go for straight scares. We're going to go for just balls to the wall, throw shit against the wall, outrageous humor type stuff. But I had fun with it. I mean, I would rank Texas Chainsaw 2 so far. I have it behind the original, and I have it behind 2003, which are both much more serious, I would say better done horror films, but you can have fun with Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. But go in with not expectations for some kind of classic slow burn horror film. Go in with the mindset of this was just like Gremlins 2, balls to the wall, throwing shit against the wall, and you can have fun with it. Critters, which would span a big franchise. Critters 2, Critters 3, Critters 4. Leonardo DiCaprio got to start in one of these Critters films. Critters, I mean, always to me as a kid, I felt like it was the sinister version, the evil version of Gremlins. You can have fun with Critters, yeah. B movie for sure. But you can, I mean, we'll probably do a watch along of all the Critters films. Maybe I'll keep my thoughts light, because that's one of those things we'll probably marathon and do a watch along of. But Critters, you'll have fun with. Night of the Creeps with what's his face, Tom Atkins, who now Night of the Creeps, I have to confess that I need to rewatch because I'm going by memory, so not too much comes to mind about it. So that's one I do have to rewatch. So that's on my list to watch for the rest of the year. But it's highly regarded amongst horror films. It has a 6 point something on IMDb, which is never really a great sign. But for a horror film, it's usually a good barometer. You just got to add that little, everything's on a curve with IMDb. It's like a 5.5 on IMDb for a horror film really probably is like a 6.5, which is great on a curve. But I've heard good things about Night of the Creeps. So that's on my list to watch. Some honorable mentions, some other things to throw in here. Aliens, 1986, of course. Bill Paxton hamming it up. Michael Biehn, Sigourney Weaver. Only didn't put it here because it's a departure from the original Alien. It doesn't feel like an actual horror film. It definitely feels more action sci-fi. But if you want to include Aliens as a horror film, that's probably the best horror film technically of 1986. But I've never thought about that as a horror film. And that's nothing to do with horror, but just because it's the 40th anniversary, I recommend completely that you sit down and watch it if you're not. And that is Big Trouble in Little China. You can't go wrong with Kurt Russell playing Jack Burton. Jack Burton deserved a whole damn series of movies. I mean, I would still be down for an older Jack Burton doing something, man. This movie was calling for it to be a franchise, and It doesn't hit the box office, so it didn't go that route, but I would love to see further adventures of Jack Burton. That's pretty much all I got for 1986. Again, in the comments, let me know if there's other things from 1986 that I need to put on my list to watch for this year. The 40-year anniversary, 1986, was a great year for horror. Was it the best year of horror in the 80s? No, I think actually next year, 1987, we're going to have some real classics in that year as well. So that's going to be, I'm excited to talk about that next year for sure. But coming up, April, diving into the Nightmare on Elm Street series, each movie doing a complete, thorough video. I got the 4K box set, so I'm super excited to dive in that. And so until then, you guys, take care.